Baltimore's children and young adults are our treasure and our future. Our goal for the Baltimore Children and Youth Fund really is to support children and young adults.
To pay for a trip to New Orleans this year, raising questions about a lack of government oversight.
Baltimore, Baltimore, Baltimore. It turns out, everybody, that Baltimore is going to Baltimore, and today we have a wonderful story from a local news affiliate out in Baltimore that is talking about an organization that is meant to help the youth of that city, that is meant to keep them engaged in the community so that we don't get no more crime or anything of the sort, and it turns out that they decided it would be a good idea to take a trip to the city of New Orleans, stay in a 4-star hotel at the cost of $130,000. Now, of course, this organization receives a huge chunk of money from the city of Baltimore, but, you know, it makes sense because you took these kids to the city of New Orleans in order to get them educated on that culture right there. It is an important historic city in our nation's history, and I'm just getting reports in from my producer that does not exist that in reality, no children's were taken on this trip. This was a vacation for the staff, paid for by the taxpayer, and can we really be surprised by this result? I think almost a year ago on this channel, we covered a similar situation that went down in the city of New York, where they decided that they were going to take a trip to Disney World on the taxpayer dime with this nonprofit's funds, you know, some kind of commingling of the two, and it turned out that the kids that were actually taken on this trip were not the kids from the youth program, they were the children of the people who worked at these particular organizations. So just like in this particular case, the people who got on this trip, who went to New Orleans, weren't the people they were trying to help. They were the staff who were helping themselves, unsurprisingly so. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
Our goal for the Baltimore Children and Youth Fund really is to support children and young adults and really provide them with the resources and the tools that are needed to be successful. Thanks to the Youth Fund, more than 80 organizations are helping young people to explore fun in new ways. Whether it's science experiments or dance.
BCYF received about $15 million in taxpayer dollars this year, guaranteed through the Baltimore City Charter. However, it operates as a nonprofit. Now, we received documents in a public information request showing the group spent about $130,000 in taxpayer dollars on a trip to New Orleans.
The February trip was for BCYF's opening plenary, aimed to help establish a vision for Baltimore's youth development ecosystem. BCYF paid about 80 people to participate in the New Orleans trip, which included their staff, board of directors, and nonprofit partners. Documents show expenses include roughly $70,000 for 3 days at the Virgin Hotel, New Orleans, nearly $29,000 on flights, and about $11,000 for a bus charter used to escort attendees from several different museums and exhibits in the New Orleans area.
You know, it's just ridiculous in every possible way. First and foremost, they had about 80 people there. They spent 3 nights there, but they're still spending around $70,000 for these hotel rooms at a hotel that, by the way, I looked up, is a 4-star hotel. It looks rather nice. It looks rather chill. And honestly, this might be a vacation that you guys out there in the audience might be interested in. And if you want to take a vacation like that, I say feel free. I say get out, enjoy yourselves, have a great time. But the thing is, maybe you don't get to take a vacation like that when the Baltimore City Charter is giving you $15 million in taxpayer funds. Maybe I don't give a damn if you want to go see museums and whatnot in the city of New Orleans at the cost of nearly $11,000, unless you're paying with it with your own money. But once again, we see time and time again, actually, that these nonprofit organizations, especially the ones that are tied to the government, just incinerate money, and they have public reporting requirements, so we see this whenever we open the books. But again, I will tell you guys, go check this video that I'm using as a source, the local news segment. It is not exactly going crazy with the views. In fact, there is a less than 0% chance, and probably a good chance, that my video will get significantly more views than that, but it's still not enough to push people in order to have a change in leadership in the city of Baltimore, who of course has been run by Democrats for decades. I mean, it's absolutely absurd that you have all these different various organizations meant to help the youth, meant to help the underprivileged non-white youth that are supposedly suffering from systemic oppression, and time again, what we see is that these organizations loot that money. They steal out of the pockets of kids and go on vacation with it. That is what almost every one of these organizations does. Black Lives Matter, all of them, name them. It's ridiculous, and I'm sick of it. But of course, this is the state of where we're at in the United States of America. And by the way, it doesn't get better when you have these organizations run directly by the city, because I believe that New York City agency that did the Disney World trip wasn't even set up as a nonprofit. I could be wrong about that. I'll probably fact check that, put something on the screen a little bit later if I'm getting that wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was actually like a department for possibly even homeless youth, but definitely underprivileged youth, that they decided that they were going to go to Disney World and not take any of those youths because to hell with them, right? I mean, come on. They need help from the city, so who gives a damn about them? Definitely not the organization that is named for and its intent and purpose is allegedly to help them specifically.
The Youth Fund is a Black-led organization that supports other Black-led organizations because they often get overlooked. They often receive fewer resources.
Spotlight on Maryland reported last year on how BCYF expensed a trip for 100 community activists to Alabama, which included payments such as $3,600 for yoga sessions.
Okay, this is where I draw the line. This is where I say I've had enough with this. 100 people on a trip to Alabama. New Orleans, I can understand. Again, a city of historic importance in the United States of America. But Alabama to do yoga? And listen, I understand. I got fans of this channel in every state in the union. My Alabama AJW supporters, you're absolutely wonderful in every possible way. And I also understand that some of you out there in the audience are very incapable of understanding any kind of humor or sarcasm and don't get that I'm joking about this. But seriously, Alabama, these are these organizations that are obsessed with evil white racism everywhere, under every rock and whatnot, and they seem to constantly, time and time again, go on lavish trips in the South, go on lavish trips at the origin of evil white racism in their minds, like Alabama. And what do they do when they're down there? They don't even eat like good Southern barbecue or anything of the sort, although I'm sure they probably did. They do yoga. They have smoothies, vegan smoothies in Alabama, and maybe that's not on the ledger, maybe that's not being directly reported by this news agency, but you bet your bottom dollar, if you're spending $3,600 on yoga, you're definitely having a kale and acai smoothie thing or whatever with some flax seeds in it, because that's the kind of level that you're operating at. And I just want to point out for everybody out there in the audience that no children's were brought on this yoga trip to Alabama either.
For too long, systemic racist policies and practices have deprived the Black community of resources for young people. The Baltimore Children and Youth Fund is working to undo this historic disparity by investing in high-quality programming for children and youth across Baltimore.
The report led former Mayor Jack Young to criticize BCYF, which he initially helped launch in 2016 as president of the Baltimore City Council. He told Spotlight on Maryland in December that he wanted BCYF to cancel its planned trip to New Orleans.
That fund was created so that community-based organizations could get funding for the programs they had for the youth, not a junket for grown-ups.
So right here we have the man himself who set up this organization back in 2016. He also has a screaming baby in the background that he is ignoring while talking about a youth organization that he put together that ignores the youth as well. And essentially he was criticizing them for, treating the money that is appropriated to them by the city council as a slush fund and pointing out the obvious that in theory, the Baltimore whatever organization of youth services is supposed to be for the youth, not for the adults. And apparently before he was tossed out of office, he actually wanted them to cancel that New Orleans trip. Now, of course, he didn't remove the funding from them. He didn't actually give them any consequences for their behavior. He just decided that he was going to let them continue. And then, of course, he lost his election to the new mayor, who, by the way, looks like a child, a very, very young looking gentleman right there. And of course, business as usual ended up being what took over the city of Baltimore. And they ultimately ended up taking this trip. But again, this is what happens when you have these organizations, and of course they don't have the accountability that is necessary because you have one party rule. And of course, I'm not saying that this can't happen in red states or red areas or red cities. Make no mistake about it, nonprofits can be quite wasteful, but there's something about the good cause and the unlimited, unaccountable funding that you get in blue states that just seems to breed this time and time again. A perfect example of this is the fact that the state of California cannot account for $24 billion in money allocated for the homeless services. We also had Thrive New York in New York City, which Bill de Blasio put his wife in charge of, because Democrats believe that when you elect a man to office, their wife, for some reason, is the co-mayor or the co-governor or the co-president. And she, of course, incinerated nearly $1 billion without producing any receipts at all whatsoever. But it was okay because she experienced some mental health when she was a child, so she wanted to do some mental health for everybody else. And just like this guy, he experienced some youth when he was a youth, so he wants to have some youth for everyone else. And of course, that just adds up to vacations, trips, super mayor-like escapades.
A spokesman for BCYF said the group's February trip included meetings with elected leaders in New Orleans who created a 10-year youth plan that Baltimore hopes to soon emulate. The spokesman told Spotlight on Maryland that BCYF's trip to New Orleans was a strategic and transformative investment in our children's future.
Yeah, so that's the excuse that was put forward by the nonprofit. They said, hey, look, New Orleans, they know what to do with their youth. Their youth, 10 out of 10, and we just want to emulate that. Because, Baltimore each and every year is like number 1 to number 3 in homicide rates. That is largely disproportionately committed among black youths. And right around that typical, homicide like cap in the country is the city of New Orleans, so we had to go to the experts and copy their midnight basketball program, and that is why we had to deploy 80 of our staff down there in order to go to museums and whatnot, get a charter bus, have fun in a luxury hotel, because this was an investment in your children's future. Their vacation, if you guys don't know, is an investment in your children's future, according to this nonprofit. Now, I would just point out that if such a youth program existed in the city of New Orleans, you know what you could do that's a little bit cheaper? You know what you could do that won't cost you $70,000 in hotels? Just get one of the people who set up this amazing program to come and give a conference for your staff right in the city of Baltimore. All you have to do is book out a venue. It will cost significantly less, but instead you needed to deploy nearly 100 staff to go on vacation, to go to museums in order to learn from the great successes of New Orleans' midnight basketball program. Yeah, sure, totally buy into that, totally believe that. That's really the investment in the future that we absolutely need in the city of Baltimore. I mean, again, I give credit to folks like Ivan Bates who are actually prosecuting repeat gun offenders, which is actually dropping the homicide rate in the city of Baltimore, because surprisingly, I know this might shock all of you, but it's actually a novel concept for the previous district attorney. If people commit crimes with firearms repeatedly, eventually one of those firearms is likely to go off and then kill somebody, and then you have a murder in your city. So when you arrest them, and again, I know this is very, very shocking to the left-wing progressives out there, when they're committing an armed robbery where they didn't kill someone, that will actually prevent them, and again, just try to follow the logic, from committing another armed robbery and then shooting the person during the course of that armed robbery, because it's only a matter of time before your armed robberies end up ultimately leading to shooting somebody. I know this is a shocking concept. I know this is quite confusing. I will actually have this written down in an infographic in the description of this video. Trust me on this. But as much as Ivan Bates has introduced just a little bit of common sense to the district attorney's office for Baltimore, in reality, nobody in that city has any sense at all whatsoever. So that's why you see these people copying programs like yoga from Alabama and going to New Orleans to see museums in order to solve the problems of the Baltimore youth in Baltimore.
Professor Brian Mittendorf teaches at Ohio State University and specializes in nonprofit accounting. He wonders whether Baltimore city leaders support BCYF spending.
Governments have a lot of oversight, and the mere fact of that money going from a government entity to a nonprofit shouldn't be the end of that oversight. And so I'd be interested in whether it comports with the policies of the government entities.
Now, look, I do appreciate when the local news tries to bring in an expert to add a little something to this particular story, but I'm just going to say this, and I just want you guys to understand, you can save yourself the Skype call in the future. When the issue is a nonprofit spending money meant for the youth on vacation to New Orleans, and then they say they want to copy the youth programs in New Orleans, which is known for high rates of youth violent crime, and again, nothing to praise at all whatsoever. We talked about on this channel the 911 delays and all sorts of crazy nonsense in the city of New Orleans, who actually defunded their police prior to the Black Lives Matter riots and saw their homicide surge. You don't need this guy to come and say, I wonder if this is a good use of funds. Let me just tell you, as someone who is not a professor at Ohio State, let me just explain to you, as somebody who is not an expert in accounting for nonprofits, this is not a good use of the funds. This is a waste of funding This is absolutely disastrous, and I don't have to wonder whether the politicians in the city of Baltimore end up supporting this, because they keep appropriating money to this organization, even though they repeatedly spend on these ridiculous trips, and they've already received negative press for that. So yeah, they still do support it, even though they're going to pretend like they're outraged by it. But when you keep giving money to somebody who wastes your money, then you don't really have anything to say about it, in my opinion. You just gotta let it go at that point in time. It's like if you give money to a degenerate gambler and then you talk to him a few days later and you're annoyed that he spent all the money on gambling. Like that's not something you should be shocked about. This organization has already demonstrated that they will spend the money that you appropriate to them for kids on vacation, and now you're like, oh my god, they got $15 million more, and for some reason they sent their staff on vacation. I don't even understand what is going on right here. Let me give them more money. Oh, they're on a plane right now. They're going on another trip. But don't worry, this time they're trying to emulate the amazing youth policies in the city of Detroit and St. Louis after that, because they've done such a good job with their youths. I mean, 2 of their people ended up getting killed by those black youths in those particular cities, but we're sure that when they come back, I mean, not the 2 in a body bag, but when the other people come back, they will do a wonderful job with our youth right here. Oh crap, 3 Baltimore youths just killed them too and stole their cars. But don't worry about it, just a couple more vacations and you'll solve all the problems in the city of Baltimore. Trust me.
Spotlight on Maryland reached out to Mayor Brandon Scott and each member of the Baltimore City Council with the following questions about BCYF's trip to New Orleans. Do you believe this was an effective use of taxpayer dollars? Do you believe BCYF should continue to operate as a nonprofit or be restructured within the Baltimore City government? None of them responded. Spotlight on Maryland reported this month on how Mayor Scott's proposed fiscal year 2026 Baltimore City budget sends $16 million in taxpayer funds to BCYF. $7 million of which BCYF then sends to the Mayor's Office of Employment Development.
So yeah, they send these questions to all the different members of the Baltimore City Council and, of course, the new mayor. And even though the previous mayor, with the screaming child in the background, is saying that they're wasting money on these trips, they decided that it would be appropriate to not answer any of the questions related to this theft, because who gives a damn about the media or accountability? But then we see the next year's budget, and instead of $15 million, they've been up to $16 million. So obviously they endorse it. Obviously, they don't give a damn. And I will also point out that this nonprofit that is totally unaccountable spends $7 million of its nonprofit money, which is just the taxpayer money, on a program back in the government for the mayor's employment thing or something ridiculous like that. So essentially, they're operating on a budget of $9 million because they spend $7 on a government program, which again doesn't make any sense because they get $16 million from the government. But of course, it's not just the fact that they're going on vacations that shows that they're wasting money. Again, think about all the staff that they took on that vacation. 80 staff members on the trip to New Orleans, nearly 100 on the trip to Alabama. This is a jobs program right here. All of these people are making some salaries, and that is probably what is eating up the bulk of the money going to this organization. So essentially, you're paying a board in order for them to hire people, in order for them to give a kickback to a government program. Supposedly, it's about helping the youth, but obviously what this is machine politics. They use that money that they get from the city government of Baltimore in order to maintain the machine, and nothing gets done for the kids. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts related to this whole situation. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. Do I have this all wrong? Is Baltimore actually the top 10 city in the United States of America? Or maybe, just maybe, is this just another instance of obvious corruption? As per usual, if you like the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social medias, support me via support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the craziness of Baltimore's nonprofit system. Till next time.